She broke me, so I ruined her entire life. While Mark went through his phone's messages, there was a strong stench of treachery in the air. Every statement struck him like a dagger to the heart. He had put all of his love and faith in her, just to find out how deeply dishonest she was. Now that she had broken him, it was time to get retribution. Mark used to be a cheerful YouTuber who was well known for his humorous videos that made his audience laugh. However, his heart was scarred by a failed relationship behind the camera. It all started when he met Sarah, a gorgeous and enchanting woman who seemed to be the solution to every wish he had. Mark was enthralled with their fast-paced romance and believed he had finally found his happily ever after. He had no idea that Sarah was hiding something from him that would rock his world. Mark discovered Sarah's covert romance one fateful day after seeing several damning texts on her phone. Realizing how deeply she had betrayed him, he felt shock and despair rush through his veins. How on earth could she have fooled him? Mark was so angry and hurt that ideas of retaliation were racing through his head. He could not allow Sarah to get away with so ruthlessly shattering his heart. He devised a scheme to get even with a steely resolve. Equipped with his YouTube channel and an intense desire for vengeance, Mark started his plan. He started by gently revealing Sarah's adultery to their shared friends and acquaintances, sowing doubt and distrust in their thoughts. Her formerly impeccable reputation started to slowly but definitely disintegrate. But Mark had an unquenchable passion for vengeance. He went further into his scheme, painstakingly creating films that presented Sarah in the worst possible light. He watched with enjoyment as her social media presence deteriorated and her online following shrank with every upload. The days stretched into weeks, and Sarah's life became unmanageable. She was alone and shunned as a result of her treachery, which had an impact on every part of her life. She begged Mark to stop his crusade, but he didn't seem to hear her. Ultimately, Mark had been successful in his attempt to destroy Sarah's life. He was enjoying his revenge, but he couldn't get rid of the emptiness that was eating away at his spirit. Even when he won, the wounds from his broken heart remained, a continual reminder of the love he had lost. Both participants left the brutal game of love and retaliation bruised and damaged, their decisions haunting them forever. And Mark pondered if the loss of his own humanity had been worth the price of revenge as he stared into the chasm of his broken heart. After his vindictive victory, Mark was left to deal with a whirlwind of conflicting feelings. A persistent feeling of emptiness overwhelmed the thrill of witnessing Sarah's life in ruins. Even though his original plan was to get retribution in order to achieve closure, he couldn't get rid of the sensation that something important was missing. As the days grew into nights, Mark's once active YouTube account started to fade. His creative spark seems to have faded, leaving a hollow shell of the person he once was. Every film he made seemed contrived, like a pale reflection of the ardor that had inspired him in the past. Mark was trapped in his own head, unable to shake the eerie recollections of his previous relationship with Sarah. He remembered times of warmth and affection, even in spite of the misery she had brought him. He began to wonder if his revenge quest had actually given him the closure he so sorely needed. Mark's determination started to falter as he was plagued with remorse and doubt. He came to the realization that his quest for vengeance had caused him to lose focus on what was really important, his personal pleasure and well-being. Although the pain from betrayal could never completely heal, he understood that holding on to his anger and hatred would only make things worse. Mark decided to give up his resentment of Sarah with a sorrowful heart. He understood that harboring resentment would only exacerbate his soul's deterioration. Rather, he made the decision to concentrate on starting over and rediscovering the things that used to comfort him. Mark started to rekindle his love for making YouTube videos gradually but steadily. But this time, there was a fresh air of vulnerability and genuineness in his videos. He spoke out to his audience about the hurt of grief and the value of forgiveness as he discussed his path to recovery. As he made his way through the rough seas of love and grief, Mark learned that inner peace, rather than pursuing retribution, was the path to true closure. He welcomed the liberation that came with forgiveness and broke free from the bonds of bitterness that had held him back for so long. Mark and Sarah had periods of doubt and uncertainty as they continued to negotiate the seas of forgiveness and healing. Their newfound happiness was clouded by the scars of their history, which continued to persist. But as time went on, they discovered that they were becoming stronger as a team and that they were committed to overcoming the challenges that were ahead. There were difficulties along the way. Periodically, old wounds reopened, bringing back terrible memories that might have halted their growth. But Mark and Sarah weren't going to let their past resentment control their present or future. Rather than avoiding the anguish and suffering that had formerly ripped them apart, they faced their demons head-on. They relied on one another for support during it all, finding courage in their common experiences and the love that united them. They discovered how to be completely honest and transparent in their communication, exposing their worries and anxieties to build a stronger bond. Mark and Sarah saw that they were becoming closer than ever as they resolved their problems. They grew to appreciate one another even more as they realized how brave and resilient it needed to put what had been destroyed back together. They set off on brand new experiences together and made lifelong memories. Together, they were stronger than they could have ever been apart, and they shared laughter and tears, triumphs and storms. And Mark and Sarah were full of hope and excitement for what lied ahead as they looked to the future. They understood that their trick was far from done, but they also understood that anything could be conquered as long as they had each other. Their tale ultimately involved redemption and rebirth in addition to forgiveness and reconciliation. It was evidence of the ability of love to mend even the most severe wounds and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of hardship. Mark and Sarah realized that their love was more powerful than any challenge they would encounter as they strolled hand in hand into the setting sun. And eager to start the next chapter of their tale, they embraced the future together with hearts full of love and appreciation. Ultimately, the path taken by Mark and Sarah served as evidence of the transformational potential of love and forgiveness. Through their experiences, they learned that accepting the potential of a better future and letting go of the past are the keys to real healing. Their narrative serves as a reminder that there is always hope for healing and rejuvenation, despite the depth of the scars. They created a kinship that was deeper and more enduring than ever before and discovered inner peace by deciding to forgive and make amends. It was clear to Mark and Sarah that their trick was far from ended as they ventured into the unknown hand in hand. But with love and resolve in their hearts, they accepted the difficulties that were ahead, confident that by working together, they could conquer all obstacles. Thus their tale goes on, serving as a monument to the tenacity of forgiveness, fortitude, and the unshakable endurance of the human spirit. Ultimately, our identity is determined by the love and compassion we choose to nurture in the aftermath of our prior experiences, not by the suffering they caused. And with optimism in his heart, Mark turned to face the future as the sun set on his turbulent past. Even while the wounds would not go away, he understood that facing the depths of his own darkness had made him stronger. Ultimately, his greatest attribute was not retaliation, but rather the bravery to select forgiveness and love in the midst of hardship. Mark became more determined to move on with every day that went by. He gave his all to his profession, giving it everything he had to produce material that connected with his audience deeply. His films became a beam of hope for many going through their own pain and betrayal. But even with his renewed sense of direction, the ghosts of his past would occasionally resurface. Deep in his memory were flashes of Sarah, a continual reminder of the suffering they had shared. But as the days went by, those recollections grew less and less of an influence on him as he continued on his path of self-discovery. Over time, Mark discovered that he was drawn to possibilities and experiences that were outside the boundaries of his history. Eager to embrace the unknown and see the globe, he set off to visit far-off places. He encountered individuals from various walks of life throughout the journey, and everyone had a unique tale of overcoming adversity and overcoming it. Mark came across a realization that would permanently alter the path of his life while on one of his journeys. He saw a wise elderly guy in the middle of a busy marketplace who talked about the transformational power of forgiveness. His comments ignited a sudden feeling of purpose and clarity in Mark, striking a chord deep inside his spirit. Now that the burden of his past had finally been removed, Mark decided to get in touch with Sarah again. But this time it was genuinely motivated by a wish for peace and closure rather than bitterness or vengeance. He understood that the only way he could really liberate himself was to forgive her. So with a heart full of forgiveness and compassion, Mark held out an olive branch to Sarah, giving her the opportunity to move past their differences and go ahead together. She surprised him by graciously and humbly accepting his gesture, acknowledging the suffering she had caused and expressing sincere regret for what she had done. Like a warm hug, Mark experienced a wave of tranquility during that reunion. Though he realized that by making the decision to forgive, he had already made a positive step toward a better future, the scars from the past might never completely heal. Upon seeing Sarah's gaze, he saw a fellow traveler on life's journey rather than an opponent. Hand in hand, they started a new chapter full of promise, healing, and optimism for a relationship that had withstood the test of time. And Mark knew that no matter what obstacles were ahead, He would meet them with bravery and resiliency, confident in the knowledge that forgiveness had set him free as they strolled into the sunset, leaving behind the shadows of their past. There were numerous obstacles in Mark and Sarah's path as they started their reconciliation journey. The delicate threads of their newfound serenity were threatened by old wounds reappearing and concerns lurking in the background of their thoughts. But as they overcome each obstacle, their relationship became closer, strengthened by their shared realization of their mistakes in the past and their resolve to work together to create a better future. They established the groundwork for a relationship based on forgiveness and trust by pledging to be open with each other and to be honest and respectful of one another. Mark and Sarah found comfort in their loved one's steadfast support as they worked through the highs and lows of their reunion. As they started their life-changing adventure, friends and family gathered around them to provide support and advice. Mark never forgot the lessons he had picked up along the road, no matter what. He carried on telling his audience about his experiences and used his position to encourage those who might be going through difficult times to be resilient and have hope. With the passage of time, Mark and Sarah's relationship developed into something truly lovely, overcoming the suffering of their past and opening the door to a happy and loving future. Knowing that they had weathered the worst of storms to find each other again, they treasured every time they spent together, laughing and crying together. Ultimately, Mark came to understand that forgiveness involved accepting the chance for a better tomorrow as well as letting go of the past. Every day he took the decision to forgive himself for the mistakes he had done along the way in addition to others. Mark couldn't help but be thankful for the lessons he had learned and the person he had become as he reflected on the turbulent trip that had led him to this point. He was now identified by the fortitude and resiliency that had seen him through it, not by the suffering of the past. Mark welcomed the future with open arms, prepared to meet any obstacles that may arise, with Sarah at his side and a fresh sense of purpose in his heart. For it was in forgiving that he had discovered the genuine meaning of love as well as redemption.